You know, the world can be a bleak place and getting bleaker by the day, which is why it's all the more important to celebrate the good news when it comes. Rejoice in the victories, which brings us to this past weekend and the opening of the latest installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a phrase that I prefer not to use because the universe itself is vast and varied and fascinating. But the Marvel universe, on the other hand, is repetitive and dull and tedious and pointless. Not really a universe at all, it turns out. It's just a series of films where each film exists only to set up the next film, which exists to set up the next one, and the whole thing altogether primarily exists to sell merchandise. The only similarity between the actual universe and the Marvel universe is that the actual universe has lots of black holes, and the Marvel universe is a black hole. It is a giant gaping vacuum that has expanded by consuming the rest of the movie industry, so that at this point in 2023, nobody in the movie industry knows how to make a movie unless it involves people in rubber suits kicking each other. All that to say, the latest Marvel movie, creatively titled The Marvels, was a massive, humiliating flop. And thank God for that. We should also note, as this is likely not a coincidental factor, that the film is a female-led girl power fest starring a team of women superheroes headlined by feminist actor Brie Larson. The abysmal numbers show just how thoroughly uninterested audiences seem to be in this kind of content. The Marvels opened with a $47 million weekend, which is a number that, might seem high, given that $47 million would be enough to feed 9,000 African villages for 100 years or something. But in terms of Marvel movies, it is a catastrophic failure. Easily the worst opening weekend in the history of the Marvel franchise generally. And made all the worse when you compare the box office receipts to the production budget. Reportedly, the Marvels cost something like $275 million to make. And that's just the production budget of the film. It doesn't count the many millions spent on marketing. Yet just to recover the production budget, the Marvels would have to earn somewhere just south of $500 million at a minimum. And based on the opening performance, it is extremely unlikely that that will happen. The film is doomed to go down as yet another recent big-budget Hollywood flop. In fact, the performance has been so bad that according to The Hollywood Reporter, it has Marvel Studios rethinking their whole strategy for making and releasing films. Watch.
This isn't the first warning sign that something's been amiss within Marvel in terms of quality control, as Kevin Feige's team has been in overdrive producing shows for streaming. Features Eternals and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania also received B Cinema scores, while audiences began complaining about keeping up with an increasing number of shows on Disney Plus to understand the overarching MCU story. Behind the scenes, Marvel Studios and Disney were well aware The Marvels was in trouble before it hit the big screen. Sources tell The Hollywood Reporter there was also a recognition that Feige and his team needed time to take stock of their theatrical tentpoles. On November 8th, Bob Iger said on an earnings call that Disney's movie empire is, quote, lost focus because of an emphasis on quantity over quality in the rush to feed Disney Plus under the Bob Chapek regime, though it was Iger himself who initiated this push before Chapek's reign. Sources say Feige and his team felt this mandate keenly to the detriment of Marvel's movies. The next day, Marvel and Disney revealed they were scaling back the number of superhero films they will release in 2024 from 3 to just 1.
Well, if I could offer some solace to audiences, you don't need to keep track of the overarching Marvel story because there is no story. You're watching a series of extended toy commercials. And the narrative is very much a secondary concern if it ranks even that high, which I don't think it does. But this leads to the question of why a redundant, lifeless, big-budget, but weirdly cheap-looking feminist superhero girl power movie would perform so poorly. Now, that's not a question that any sane person has to think very hard to answer. I just kind of answered it in the question itself. The question answers itself. The media isn't thinking very hard either. They've, of course, decided that it must be sexism. So here's an article in The Stylist laying the groundwork for this excuse before the box office receipts were tallied. That's how you know, right, that a movie is good, is that before it comes out, they're already telling you that if you don't watch it, you're a bigot. Quote, fresh off the back of first reviews, fake takes about the film have sadly started to circulate on X, formerly Twitter, from people who have not yet seen the movie. This might sound familiar. The first trailer stirred the sexist trolls from their slumber, and after they review-bombed Captain Marvel, it was almost inevitable that they would return to do the same for the sequel. Within 2 days of its release, the teaser became the most disliked video on YouTube, with one user labeling it Captain Feminist and the Patriarchy Stone, which is great. It seems that the toxic underbelly of the comic book franchise is back on display as some misogynistic fans attempt to slander A brilliant film simply because it's led by 3 women. Slander. Yes, the toxic underbelly is slandering again. Got to watch out for that toxic underbelly. And of course, this has to be the explanation. Why else wouldn't people flock to see a movie where a bunch of annoying women run around punching people? That's the conclusion shared by the director of the film, too, Nia DaCosta. As Breitbart reports, she was making these kinds of excuses well ahead of time. Quote, as Disney's The Marvel goes down as the biggest flop in Marvel Cinematic Universe history, the movie's director, Nia DaCosta, has played her final 3 cards: race, gender, and sexuality. The Marvel's director lashed out at haters, calling them bigots in a recent interview with Variety. But the irony is that her movie's largest group of ticket buyers has turned out to be male and white. Nia DaCosta sounded off on the negative fan buildup to the Marvels during the interview. Quote, there are pockets where you go because you're like, I'm a super fan, I want to exist in the space of just adoration, which includes civilized critique. Then there are pockets that are really virulent and violent and racist and sexist and homophobic and all those awful things. And I choose the side of light. That's the part of fandom I'm attracted to. So did you catch that? It is not only racist and somehow homophobic to dislike the Marvels, it is also violent. Not paying $30 for 2 tickets to the Marvels this weekend is an act of violence. Choose the side of light, the director implores you. Choose goodness, choose love. Choose to give her your money. Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the left has lost their minds. Leftism is their religion. Abortion is their official sacrament. Meanwhile, pro-life efforts, which are now more important than ever, are booming. Despite the narrative, pro-lifers have not gone away. In fact, they're getting more and more active. As one of the largest pro-life organizations in the world, no one is in a better position than 40 Days for Life to end abortion state by state. They've opened a record number of locations since Roe was overturned, and they continue to grow in volunteers. They now have 1 million volunteers in 1,500 cities. 40 Days for Life holds peaceful vigils outside abortion facilities in an effort to change hearts and minds in the most blue pro-abortion states. You can help 40 Days for Life fight ongoing legal battles to protect free speech for their volunteers by giving a tax-deductible gift of any amount at 40daysforlife.com. That's 40daysforlife.com. In a world filled with uncertainties, you need to be prepared for any possibility. You need My Patriot Supply. My Patriot Supply is your trusted partner for emergency preparedness. Whether it's a natural disaster, a sudden emergency, or unforeseen circumstances, My Patriot Supply's high-quality food storage solutions ensure that you and your loved ones are always well-fed no matter what comes your way. Their best-selling 3-month emergency food kit is even customizable with options like their ultimate breakfast kit, a mega protein kit with real meat, and even a gluten-free kit. Your 3-month emergency food supply provides over 2,000 calories each day for optimal strength and energy in stressful situations. Don't wait for disaster to strike before taking action. Invest in your safety and well-being by securing your food storage today. Go to preparewithwalsh.com to get your 3-month food supply today. That's preparewithwalsh.com. Now, the problem with blaming the movie's horrible performance on sexism and racism, one of the dozens of problems anyway, is that, as it said in the article, by far the largest demo who went to see the film were men, and most of them were white men, presumably blind and deaf white men, but those details aren't recorded. So perhaps Nia DaCosta needs to take this up with all the women and racial minorities who arrogantly and violently declined to go see the movie in theaters. I mean, they're the ones who failed her. Or maybe, alternatively, she is the one who failed by failing to make a movie that anyone wants to see. Yes, now I think maybe we're on to something here. So why did the movie actually flop? I think there are 2 reasons, both of which we've already alluded to. The first is that, for the most part, the truth is, nobody really wants to see female-led action movies. People are not that interested in female action stars. Hollywood insists that we should be interested, but we just aren't. Female audiences are, it turns out, especially not interested in female action stars. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule. There are a few iconic female action heroes, like Sigourney Weaver as Ripley in the Alien films, and a couple of others. But as a general principle, action movies are a man's domain. They are for men, they are about men, and that's just the reality. You could be sad about it. You can insist that it should be different, but it is what it is. And that's why if you look at a list of the top 50 highest grossing action films of all time, maybe 2 of the top 50 were led by women. And one of them was Captain Marvel, coming in at 19 on the list, which grossed about $1 billion. But that film was sandwiched in between Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War, both in the top 5, and it rode their coattails to box office glory. So Captain Marvel is kind of like the WNBA of superheroes. Her existence depends on the success of her male counterparts. Although in fairness, people did actually go to see Captain Marvel, but literally nobody in history has ever seen a WNBA game. In any case, the point is that audiences aren't generally interested in female action films. It's not because of sexism, given that female audiences are also uninterested. It's more that men, by and large, they make more compelling, more convincing, more entertaining action heroes. That's not my opinion. I mean, it is my opinion, but it's not just my opinion. All of the objective evidence suggests that it is the opinion of almost all moviegoers, men and women alike, whether they put it so bluntly or not. Also, the audience for action movies is primarily male, especially superheroes. So like when an 8-year-old boy goes to see Spider-Man, he likes to imagine himself as the hero. No 8-year-old boy is running around the house with a bath towel made into a cape shouting, "I'm Captain Marvel." That's not happening. Hollywood has tried to turn the action genre into a woman's domain. They've tried to feminize it, like they tried to feminize everything, but the social engineering just hasn't taken hold, and it probably never will. And second, as I've already covered, female-led or not, the superhero genre it has long since grown stale. Now it is moldy and decomposing on the counter. There is just a limit, right, to how long you can convince the audience to come back and watch the same story over and over again. It turns out that the limit is about 20 years. That's the limit. Now, for me, it was like 20 minutes. I saw 20 minutes of one superhero movie. I said, yeah, I kind of get it. Like, I get it. It's fine. I get it. I understand superhero movies. I understand what you're doing. I get it. I don't need to rewatch it a million times. I don't need to spend 2 decades of my life watching this same thing over and over and over again. But a lot of audiences, apparently, they needed to do that. But even those audiences are the ones that have a much greater tolerance for repetition, even they have grown tired of it. I would say that their tolerance for repetition is too great, but at least now most of them seem to agree that if Marvel wants us to watch their movies, they need to start making actual movies, rather than, as Martin Scorsese would say, amusement park rides that go around in circles forever, never ending, never saying anything, never bothering to tell a story. Or they can keep on their current track and continue losing money, which is perfectly fine with me. Either way, it's not just me saying, but all of America apparently saying, that The Marvels is today canceled. Hey YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.